Okay. And this is why muscle strengthening is super important. Just understanding how to use your different macronutrients so that you're able to do the function of the day that you need to do. And there is a way that you can use your diet to then sort of contour your body the way you want your body to look. Why is there so much buzz right now about the microbiome?
Some of the results didn't seem too surprising. Like,
that was such a fun recap of part one, in which we talked about the food industry secrets. Okay, you will not be disappointed with part two, because we go even deeper, telling you more and more reveals. For example, do you know what supposedly is the most addictive food group? It will stun you. Thanks for joining us, and don't forget to click subscribe. Yes, what about you, Antonia? Anything else that kind of stood out to you in terms of the driving points of the study, their outcomes?
It was a very fascinating study. I loved how the four participants, or the four pairs that they chose to highlight, it was a very personal human experience. What I found interesting was I felt like it was a little biased. It definitely drove home the point that a vegan diet produced better outcomes. And it was a really big finding of the study, both with, like we talked about, body mass, decrease in visceral fat, overall body weight, and chronological age versus their biological age, which was very interesting for me, coming from the medical standpoint, in which some of the findings did find that the twins who were on the vegan diet had managed to decrease their their biological age, which was very, very interesting, because who doesn't want to live longer? Who doesn't want to be young for the rest of their life? And they found that some of the telomeres are basically the proteins that are on the ends of your DNA, or your chromosomes, that are protective. So when your cells are dividing, these telomeres enable them to replicate without messing up your genetic information in your sequences. However, with every division, your telomeres get shorter and shorter. The twins are on the vegan diet, they found that the telomeres were longer. Now, longer telomeres means that your cells are able to divide and die at a lesser rate. So that was very interesting for me. I just wish that the documentary maybe went into more of the foods that were associated with longer telomere health.
I mean, we really just found the fountain of youth, right? Everyone's always looking for the fountain of youth. And this study pretty much showed us that the fountain of youth is just eating healthy.
Right.
Eating healthy, taking care of your body is really the true fountain of youth. So yes, you can age backwards if you wanted to. It just requires living and eating healthy. So I love that point. And perhaps, like you said, this can be sort of the initial study that leads to additional studies to give us a little bit more details as to how exactly we should be eating. One of the other things that I wanted to mention also, that we have to give honorable mention to cheese, because cheese was definitely a focus of the study and specifically of the documentary, not so much the study, but of the documentary itself. And one of the things that driving points that I thought was really interesting is, we talk about food addiction, and sometimes we talk about it from a casual perspective. But this documentary actually highlighted that there is an actual proven chemical addiction. And I remember someone recently told me that cheese is actually even a stronger addiction than salt and sugar. I haven't looked that up. Don't quote me by it, but this is now a hot topic. So what do you guys think about sort of the driving points about cheese and the cheese industry?
well, I feel like, yeah, cheese is definitely, it's here to stay. People love it. People love to add a little sprinkle on. And I think for a lot of it, people are doing it for flavor, honestly, and maybe texture. And so I think there are ways to kind of overcome the cheese addiction that people have, because really all they're really seeking is a sensory experience. So if you're able to kind of recreate that, whether it's from a dairy alternative, or just like learning to make creamier plant-based sauces, or figuring out like, oh, I really like the savoriness that this cheese gives. How can I season my food to give that savory appeal? I think a lot of people sometimes use cheese as a, well, the food underneath didn't come out too well, so let me just sprinkle a little bit of cheese on it. I think something that's really important is probably that nutrition education and like culinary literacy, which is something that I was very glad that they kind of talked about in the documentary. I appreciated that they were able to go into like, okay, here's how you cook a really good vegan food. This is how you can, you know, still be satisfied even with reducing or cutting out something that isn't super necessary. Because you can get your calcium and stuff from a multitude of sources. Like is a source of calcium, but it's not the end all be all. And so I think really like, yeah, the whole cheese focus was interesting, but I think it's just people are seeking sensory satisfaction, and there are so many different ways we can do that with a little bit of culinary skill.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree with you. I like the point that you highlighted, how emotional eating is for a lot of people. Yeah,
Mhm.
hence the comfort foods. And to your point also, the other honorable mention is the fish industry. Y'all just gonna have to watch to see what they said about the, like, I probably will never eat farm. I don't know if I'll eat fish again, and I love fish, but definitely not farmed. Okay. You gonna have to watch this documentary to find out what we are talking about when it comes to the food industry. Antonia, one of the things that we're always looking at is representation. And I thought the representation of the sort of the focus twin sets was interesting, because we always want to make sure that there's some representation of various subgroups or minoritized groups. What did you think about the representation in terms of the subgroup? And did you get a chance to pan the whole room when all 21 twins showed up?
I believe the study was amazing in the sense that it controlled for genetic factors because it allowed for us to really get down to the nitty gritty of, the foods that we consume and the effect they have on our body. Um, Although I do think they tried to have a representation of the cultural influence that diet has in our lives. Like most studies, people of color typically are not represented. Although the cameos of the four pairs, three out of the four were minority. We had the Filipina group, the South African group, and the African American group. However, when they did pan to the other pairs, it was predominantly white, which we see primarily in a lot of the studies that are done um, on multiple things concerning health. I think they tried. They could have did a little better.
Yes, they were very intentional about who they focused on.
Mhm.
I
I thought it was interesting also that they focused on sexual response. And I wish we had time to get into all the sort of neurological interplay of our diets. But I thought that the focus only on the women was interesting. And I don't recall that there was an explanation why it was only the women that they focused on, but I thought that was interesting. But it does speak to the fact that every aspect of our health does better when we eat healthier. And I think that's kind of like the driving point of the overall documentary. Now, in terms of your take home, because one of the things that I thought was interesting was that they supplied the food in the very beginning, and then in the second half of the study, the peers had to continue with their assignment on their own. Weight loss is a journey for most of us, right? What were your thoughts about the behavioral aspect, about the consistency of people being able to stick to a particular meal plan or diet plan, and how much behavior plays into, and change of behavior, how difficult it is, and how much it plays into our success? when it comes to our eating?
Well, one thing I want to mention is that actually, if you look at the study itself, the people who were on the vegan diet, they did have a little bit more difficulty. They did report a little bit less satisfaction with following the meal plan because it was very strict. And so when we're looking at behavioral changes and, having done outpatient nutrition one-on-one counseling, you can't always be strict. Like you do have to give people some leeway. You have to meet people where they are and then, creep them forward because, behavioral change, it really does come from, yes, you can have all of the support, whether it's family, friends, health professionals, things like that. But you do yourself do need to be motivated and feel like it's something attainable for you. And
Mhm.
so, I think it's nice that maybe like the twins had their twin to help motivate them. But yeah, behavioral change for something very drastic is very hard and it does take a village, honestly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I commend them. I actually looked at a follow-up of some of the pairs, and while they're not vegan, they're still either leaning more vegetarian or omnivore with a more vegetarian focus. And so they found what works for them. And I think kind of going on to the future is like, yeah, more plant-based, do something that's manageable and sustainable. Because if it's sustainable, then, yeah, it's not going to be such a mental burden to try to do those healthy behaviors that help you out in the long term.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, it was a drastic or strict diet, but it was also a new diet for all of them, right? They
Mhm.
weren't living lives where they were vegan, so having to kind of learn a way of life, it very quickly is very challenging, especially when we all come from many cultures that are heavily based in animal-based products. If you had to give people a take-home message, Antonia, what would be your take-home message about eating healthy, finding the right diet and things like that? What would you encourage individuals who are on this journey to do?
Seek help. Talk to your healthcare providers. Ask if there are nutritionists or registered dietitians that you could be referred to. Really being supportive and forgiving to yourself in the process. And if you're experiencing food insecurity or don't have access to healthy diet choices, reaching out to food banks in your community or applying for programs such as CalFresh or WIC that will help increase your access to healthy, nutritious foods. Taking small steps. The vegan diet may not be for everyone, but making healthy substitutions along the way, and reaching out to support from Registered Dietitian, healthyplate.org, and different people in your community that can assist you.
That's awesome. I saw a smile on Markita's face as soon as you said healthyplate.org.
Yeah.
Don't we all love the healthy plates? So if they wanted to find out more about your insight on healthy eating and tips that you may have for others, where can they find you, Markita?
And so, well, you can find me on Instagram at the Acro Dietitian, ACRODIETITIAN. Yeah, spelling dietitian with a T, not a C.
Boom, boom. Antonia, where can they find you also to learn some tips about how to maneuver some of our resources so that they can eat healthily?
Yes, you can find me at Mascara Medicine, like
Love
so.
it.
Mascara Med.
Love it, love it, love it. And I am Dr. T, the hand behind the handle of Healthy Bump Club right here on YouTube and also Healthy Bump Club on Instagram. We thank you guys for joining us. We hope you learned more about this, not just the documentary, but just in general about how to eat healthy, how to approach a healthy diet, and really how to, like Antonia said, get the help so that you know how to balance your food and your muscle mass and your percentage body fat and your body composition in general as you use food as your medicine and as your tool to contour the body that you desire. And make sure you check out other videos. We have Markita schooling us on a lot of things like how to read the labels. You know, a lot of us are uncomfortable when it comes to reading food labels. Make sure you check out that video. And Antonia gave us some 411 if we talk about genetics in the past. Make sure you check out those videos. We thank you guys for watching. We see you guys when? Next episode. And